Hello dear viewers. This story follows CEO Toan and his wife, Ly Tu Diem, as they return to his hometown to visit his grandmother before the birth of their first child. In the peaceful countryside, they share heartfelt memories, receive the grandmother's emotional blessings, and promise to carry on the family's love and legacy for future generations. If you enjoy touching family stories like this one, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more meaningful videos to come. The summer breeze rustled gently through the rice fields as the sleek black car rolled to a stop on the narrow village road. It had been years since CEO Toan last returned to his hometown, years filled with boardrooms, city lights, and the ceaseless hustle of corporate life. But today was different. Today, he wasn't returning as a businessman, but as a grandson. And beside him, her hand resting delicately on her round belly, was Ly Tu Diem, his wife, glowing and calm, 8 months pregnant with their first child. They stepped out of the car, and for a moment, everything stood still. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and lemongrass. A rooster crowed in the distance. Children played barefoot under the shade of an old tamarind tree. All around them was the simplicity of life untouched by time. Ahead stood a small, weather-worn house shaded by banana trees. Ivy crept lazily across the old stone walls, and a wooden wind chime swayed softly on the front porch. It was Toan's childhood home, a modest, warm, filled with memories of simpler days. And inside, waiting with more anticipation than anyone could imagine, was his grandmother. She had raised Toan like her own son, ever since his parents passed away in a tragic accident when he was just a boy. Time had stolen her strength, bent her back, and dimmed her vision, but not her spirit. When she heard that her grandson and his wife were coming back to visit, especially with the baby due any day now, she had been too excited to sleep. All morning, she bustled around the kitchen with shaky hands, brewing tea, slicing fruit, and preparing her famous mung bean cakes, even though everyone had told her to rest. Inside the house, the smell of warm ginger tea and old wood wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. On a low wooden chair by the window sat the old woman, a knitted scarf on her lap, her silver hair tied neatly in a bun. When she looked up and saw them, her eyes lit up, not just with joy, but with something deeper, a sense of fulfillment. "Toan Diem," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're really here." Toan dropped to his knees beside her, taking her frail hands in his. "We couldn't have the baby without seeing you first, Grandma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Diem knelt beside him, carefully guiding the grandmother's hand to rest on her belly. The old woman gasped softly when she felt a gentle kick. "Oh my," she chuckled, her voice cracking. "He's strong. Just like his father was." A single tear slid down her cheek. She had prayed for this moment, longed to touch the next generation, to feel the miracle of life in her hands before her own journey came to an end. She wanted her great-grandchild to know that even though they lived in a different world, with different dreams, their roots were still here, in this quiet village, in this small house, in this beating heart of a grandmother who had loved fiercely and lost greatly. Outside, the wind carried the scent of guava flowers and distant rain. But inside, in that humble room filled with love and memory, time seemed to pause, just long enough for a grandmother's wish to come true. The midday sun filtered gently through the lattice windows, casting golden patterns across the floor. Inside the familiar little house, time seemed to slow down. After lunch, the three of them sat together on the bamboo mat in the living room. The old fan creaked rhythmically as it spun, stirring the quiet air. Diem leaned back slightly, her hands cradling her round belly, while Toan sat close to his grandmother, watching her every gesture with tender eyes. For a while, no one spoke. There was no need to. The comfort of being together, of shared presence, filled the room more than any words could. But then, the grandmother's voice, fragile yet vibrant, broke the silence. "Do you remember," she said, smiling, "how you used to hide behind the water jars every time you broke something in the kitchen?" Toan chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I was afraid you'd scold me. I always found you, didn't I?" she laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "But I never had the heart to be mad. You were just a boy, so full of curiosity and chaos." Diem watched the two with warmth in her heart. She had heard many stories about Toan's past, but seeing him like this unburdened, laughing freely, was something rare. In the city, he was a man of control and precision. Here, he was simply a grandson, a child again in the presence of love. The grandmother turned to Diem next. "He brought you here once, many years ago. Do you remember, child?" Diem smiled softly. "Yes, I remember. I was nervous. I thought you wouldn't like me." "Nonsense," the grandmother said firmly. "The moment I saw the way he looked at you, I knew. That kind of love is rare, deep, quiet, and true. He's a better man because of you." Toan reached over and gently took Diem's hand. Their fingers intertwined in silence, a subtle gesture but heavy with meaning. Life hadn't always been kind to them. There had been losses, misunderstandings, long hours apart, but through it all, they had chosen each other again and again. Then, the grandmother picked up a tiny piece of fabric from beside her chair. It was a small hand-sewn cap, made of soft cotton. "I made this for your baby," she said, placing it in Diem's hand. "It's not much. My fingers don't work the way they used to, but I wanted to leave something. A little piece of love." Diem's throat tightened. She held the cap gently, imagining the tiny head it would one day warm. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Thank you, Grandma." There was a long pause, filled with quiet emotion. Outside, the leaves rustled, and a dove cooed from the rooftop. Everything felt peaceful, like the world had paused to allow the small, sacred gathering to exist just as it was. Suddenly, the baby kicked again. Diem gasped and laughed, and Toan quickly placed his hand over hers. "He's active today," she said, eyes wide. "Of course," the grandmother said, her voice laced with pride. "He knows he's surrounded by love. That's why he's dancing." The room filled with soft laughter. These were the moments that no photograph could capture, the subtle, precious instants that stitched a family's soul together. For Toan, sitting there with the two women he loved most in the world, something shifted. All the weight he carried in the city, expectations, ambition, pressure, seemed to melt away. He was reminded of what truly mattered: legacy, love, and the bonds that time could never break. The late afternoon sun dipped low behind the distant hills, casting a warm amber glow over the village. Long shadows stretched across the garden as birds began to settle in for the evening. Inside the house, the mood had shifted, still tender, still intimate, but now tinged with the quiet melancholy of parting. Toan gently helped Diem to her feet while his grandmother gathered a small bundle from a wooden chest. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as if she was holding time back with each gesture. Finally, she placed the bundle into Diem's hands, wrapped in soft, faded cloth, worn with age but carefully tied. "What is this, Grandma?" Diem asked gently, her voice almost a whisper. The old woman smiled, a mixture of pride and nostalgia lighting her face. "A few things I saved. I thought I'd never have the chance to pass them on, but now I do." Diem slowly unfolded the cloth. Inside were several precious heirlooms, a tiny baby shirt, yellowed by time but clearly handmade, a silver bracelet, small enough for a newborn's wrist, and a folded note in old-style handwriting. Diem brought her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. "That shirt," the grandmother said softly, "was Toan's, from when he was just a few weeks old. He wore it during his first blessing ceremony. And the bracelet, it was your grandfather's gift to me when we learned we were having a child. I want your baby to have these. To carry the strength and love of those who came before." Toan stood silent, his jaw tight, eyes wet. In all his life, he had never imagined such a full-circle moment. Here was the woman who had held him as an infant, now passing down his first clothes to the next generation. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around his grandmother in a long, silent embrace. "I'll never forget this," he murmured. "Neither will our son." The grandmother, though frail, held him tightly. "Promise me one thing," she whispered. "Anything. Bring him back here. Let him know where he comes from. Let him hear the birds of this village and run barefoot in this garden. Let him know he has roots as deep as the trees out there." Toan nodded slowly. "I promise." Outside, the cicadas had begun their evening song, their rhythmic chorus echoing softly. The sun had nearly disappeared, casting the house in golden twilight. It was time to go. Diem bent down carefully to embrace the grandmother one last time. "I'll take care of him," she said, her eyes glistening. "Both of them." The old woman gave a small nod, then gently placed her hand over Diem's belly one final time. "Stay safe, little one," she said to the child she could not yet see. "Grow strong, grow kind. You are loved already." As they stepped out onto the porch, the wind picked up, swirling the scent of guava leaves and blooming frangipani into the air. Toan turned back for one last look. The image of his grandmother sitting in the doorway, waving with both hands and smiling, would remain etched in his heart forever. They drove away slowly, neither speaking at first. Diem rested her head against the seat, one hand over her belly, the other clutching the heirlooms close. Finally, Toan reached over and took her hand. "We'll come back," he said. "Every year, no matter what. This isn't just our story, it's his beginning too." And as the road curved and the village faded behind them, their hearts carried more than just memories. They carried the blessing of a grandmother's love, the weight of a promise, and the quiet joy of a new life soon to arrive.